Okay, so, first of all, I want to apologize for my lack of involvement on this channel for the past few months, and I especially want to apologize to you, my favorite subscriber. That's right, you. Wink wink. I'm talking about you. I just want to say that I do still have many ideas for videos, and many things that I want to say, and making videos is something that I really, really love to do. But I haven't been keeping up with the YouTube community lately, and I rarely make the time to actually make videos on my channel. For those of you who don't know me very well, I've been involved in the YouTube men's rights / anti-feminist / manosphere community for roughly 7 years now. And 7 years ago, we were much more outnumbered by our opponents, and awareness of the ideas and issues that we discuss was almost nothing. Nobody even knew that we existed, and much has changed since then. I never did make a video about that vile murdering nutcase, Elliot Rodger, after his shooting spree, but I wanted to, and I can see that people are still talking about Elliot Rodger, so I hope that I have something to say about him that hasn't already been said 100 times. So here's what I want to say about Elliot Rodger. Ever since I first became involved in the manosphere, I have frequently encountered 3 distinct terms that are commonly used to identify some of the most problematic male opponents of men's rights, and I'm going to outline all 3 of them in this video. Those terms are so-called white knights, Manginas, and Pussybeggars. I'd say that as inclusive as MRAs are, it has been very well established right from the get-go that you really can't be an MRA if you're also one of these 3 types of men. And I agree with that consensus. Even though these terms can be abused, they do serve a worthy purpose in my opinion. Many self-described feminists and egalitarians have suggested that our use of such terms is a form of shaming, or that the use of these anti-male terms means that the men's rights movement is not pro-male enough, and that MRAs therefore present a false image of themselves as being pro-male, while actually they have some hidden agenda like misogyny to promote. I'm inclined to agree that the men's rights movement is not pro-male at all. It's really just pro-human, pro-truth, and pro-fairness. That's what I really think. I myself have never claimed to be pro-male, and I don't consider myself to be pro-male. I'm just pro-human, pro-truth, pro-fairness, pro-philosophy, pro-debate, anti-echo chamber. You get the picture. Whenever I sense that I don't have anything unique or insightful to contribute, then I just keep my mouth shut. I'm drawn to controversy. Why should I say something when dozens of other people will say it for me? Nothing really drains my motivation quite like the idea that I just might be preaching to the choir. I don't enjoy agreeing with people. It just seems like a waste of effort to me. I prefer to engage people in debate. But I digress. So back to the 3 most destructive types of men. So I will start with the white knight. This is the most common of the 3. The white knight is a guy who indulges in a fantasy where he is the brave knight rescuing a damsel in distress. His motivation might be an outdated code of honor, or it might just be that he is thinking with his testicles. I've been accused of being a white knight before. Paul Elam and Alison Timon, aka Typhon Blue, have both accused me of white knighting for a certain someone, namely the Femitheist Divine. I don't hold that against them. From their perspective, it probably did look like that's what I was doing. But this is a very common mentality that most men have probably fallen into at least once. It's something that's very easy to do, given our nature. And it's a big problem, because it causes extreme bias, and because it's so inherently sexist. For example, a woman can never be the villain or the dragon. A man can never be the damsel in distress. And women are also much less inclined to engage in this sort of role-playing behavior unless they portray themselves as the damsel in distress. White knighting definitely is a male thing. I see the white knight as a perversion of the traditional male role as protector and provider. There's nothing wrong with being a protector or a provider as long as you're not acting out of fantasy and attacking an innocent person. I remember watching a video by Stardust a while back, where he claimed that the male's inherent flaw is his desire to make himself useful to other people. And I couldn't disagree more with Stardust. Everyone should make themselves more useful, in my opinion. Passive aggression is not healthy. But then again, I do thrive on controversy. So anyway, that's the White Knight. Now on to the Mangina. These guys are much less common and much easier to identify. This is your self-hating male. Manginas literally worship women and femininity, and they are very, very passionate. Manginas are also very masochistic and very smug about their masochism. A Mangina will almost certainly identify themselves as a male feminist. They also typically seem very feminine because they're disgusted and ashamed of their own masculine traits. The Mangina is a perversion of traditional romantic love and our evolved male courting instincts. Instead of falling in love with a real woman, a Mangina will fall in love with the idea of women. They fall in love with femininity itself. The Mangina is misandry personified, and we really can't have that in the men's movement, now can we? Now on to the strangest and rarest of them all, the Pussybeggar. You know, I remember a time when the biggest MRA names here on YouTube were a guy who goes by the name of Argus Eyes, and another guy who calls himself Thugtician. Thugtician was particularly vocal about his contempt for so-called Pussybeggars. Although I think that Thugtician was too obsessed with them, and I don't know where he finds all these Pussybeggars, quite frankly. But he sure seems to think that the internet is just crawling with them. So what is a Pussybeggar? You see, the thing that makes a Pussybeggar is the fact that the Pussybeggar truly believes that women choose the wrong men. The Pussybeggar believes that there are good men, and then there are bad men. But rather than to accept the choices that women make and deal with their own rejection, they convince themselves that the world is unfair to them. They actually think that they have a better idea of what types of men women should choose than women themselves do. And it should come as no surprise to anyone that a Pussybeggar would never consider himself to be the wrong choice for a woman. Hell no. The bad man is always the other man. The Pussybeggar is always the good man. The Pussybeggar has a very important message to send to women, and his message is that he is a better choice than his competitors. The Pussybeggar really believes that he's the nice guy, and that he would never mistreat a woman. It's only those other guys who mistreat women. And of course, the Pussybeggar believes that if women were smarter, they would always choose the Pussybeggar, and the Pussybeggar would get laid, and the other inferior men wouldn't. Anytime that a male comes up with a theory about who women should choose, you have to take it with a grain of salt. If only women would sleep with nice guys like me, all of the world's problems would go away. Yeah, okay. So rather than to take an interest in any real gender issues, the Pussybeggar just wants to vent and complain about the terrible choices that women make, all the while presenting themselves as the best possible option for women. It's absurd. And what ultimately motivates the Pussybeggar and the whole Pussybeggar mentality is their own personal belief that they, the Pussybeggar, are a superior choice over other men. The Pussybeggar believes that women are choosing inferior men, men who don't really deserve the love that women give them. and they feel like this is unfair to them. It's all about them. Me, me, me. My pain, my suffering. I deserve better. Women should choose me. You get the picture. Their jealousy towards other men and their hatred towards men who get laid makes them totally incompatible with the men's rights movement. Can you imagine a movement of people who all think that the world should revolve around them? That the world should be their own private pity party? Can you imagine a movement of men who hold other men in contempt for the crime of being loved and adored by women? Can you imagine a movement of men who have no trouble with ignoring the blatant hypocrisy, allowing themselves to hate other men just for having something that they want for themselves? Can you imagine a movement of men who are consumed by both real misandry and real misogyny in a way that's mutually reinforcing? I sure can't. Honestly, I've never come across anyone who embodies the pussybeggar stereotype, more so than Elliot Rodger. That murderer was pure, distilled pussybeggar, in my humble opinion. And I'm sure that by now you are all very familiar with Elliot Rodger's views, so I don't think that I really need to bother with repeating or citing any specific statements that Elliot Rodger has made in order to make my case that he was, in fact, a pussybeggar. But I do recommend that you take a look at Thugtician's excellent analysis and description of the pussybeggar, in case you haven't come across it yet. There's a link in the lower bar. To me, it really almost sounds like he was describing Elliot Rodger, and that's 5 years before he made the news for his murder of 6 innocent people. I'm not saying that pussybeggars are all potential murderers or anything like that. I'm just pointing out that we in the men's movement have already identified these pussybeggars as opponents of our common cause, long before our feminist opponents started to associate MRAs with pussybeggars as a deliberate attempt to slander us. Just for the record, I oppose all manner of white knights, Manginas, and pussybeggars, and I have no problem with applying these terms to men on the rare occasion that they actually do conform to these problematic archetypes. Now there's one more thing that I want to say on this topic, and that is to tie it back to feminism. One thing I think that has made feminism so potent in brainwashing women in particular is its promotion of a pseudo-collective identity. What I mean by this is, for some reason, when women hear the word women, they really hear you. And when some women use the word women, they really mean me. It's not a coherent or logical worldview. It's more of a shallow word game. It's a form of euphemistic substitution. Because nobody likes a whiner, right? This is how they move from the personal to the political, as feminism preaches, by adopting a shallow collective consciousness and identity. What begins as a very self-centered idea of me versus the world, then quickly becomes translated to women versus the world, or women versus the patriarchy, or women versus men. This subtle substitution creates a lot of nonsense when you start to follow along with the logic and take it seriously. That's why the feminist analysis just doesn't stand up to scrutiny. For example, I should be at the front of the line makes perfect sense, but everyone should be at the front of the line doesn't. My sibling is incredibly annoying makes sense, but all siblings are incredibly annoying is absurd. The Marxist theory that underpins patriarchy theory, as well as the notion that gender exists as something analogous to class, is unknown to most people, but yet this phony collective identity has become totally mainstream. What's interesting about Elliot Rodger is that he obviously did start out with the me versus the world mentality, but he never tried to mask his own self-absorption or his own self-pity. His lashing out at the world was totally naked, exposing all of its latent ugliness, absurdity, and contradiction. I find that there is a lot of this thinly veiled self-absorption and self-pity present in the feminist analysis as well. but it's somewhat hidden behind all the collectivist language of the ideology. It is plain to see that Elliot Rodger's issues were personal, not political. But feminism disguises the personal as the political, and so it taps into the very same narcissism, the very same solipsism, the very same jealousy, the very same rage, and the very same childish instincts, all while maintaining a thin veneer of solidarity, the pursuit of justice, and the greater good. Elliot Rodger constructed his own special, unique, tailor-made ideology, to be worn by him and only him, and he wore it with pride. He knew his target audience very well, because he was his target audience. His cult had only one member, himself. He was his own loyal follower, and he followed himself to the grave, dragging 6 innocent people with him. It really makes me sick just thinking about how sick this guy really was. But at least there was never any real potential for his ideology to spread beyond his own sick mind. Not so with feminism. Senator Ann Cools recently told me on camera that she considers feminism to have been a plague. And there's a lot of truth to that. But it's a truth that the public is not quite ready to swallow just yet. And I predict that that will change soon enough.